Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special, where we're talking about the dangers of not writing a will. A lot of people are still asking, do I need to? If so, when do I need to start preparing a will? But even deeper than that is what happens to some of the unclaimed assets within a will that people are unable to access. Before we listen to a story that talks a little bit about that, let me introduce you to my panelists. On my right, we have John Sakwa. He is a family lawyer. He'll be taking us through the do's and don'ts of writing a will. He's been here before. We've actually discussed this previously, but we're bringing it in now in terms of the unclaimed assets part of it. And then we have Phil Love. Phil Love is a case study who's going to tell us about his own story and struggle in trying to access the wills of his deceased parents. So he'll tell us a little bit more about his story. And finally, we have John Mwangi. He's a manager at the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, who actually help people claim and access some of these assets. So we're going to be hearing from them in just a few moments. You can talk to us on 22422, leave your name and location, or use the hashtag MondaySpecialKE on Twitter. Just want to read one or two tweets. Mark Darkaskos says, keeping a secret of your wealth without informing your relatives or friends is very dangerous. Then we have Jeff Blackley, who says, whoever doesn't leave behind a will actually hates themselves and everyone else around them. Some strong views there. And then Steve Mopao says, most Kenyans don't believe in writing a will. It's never really been a priority. Well, let's take a look at a story here that talks a little bit more about what we'll be delving into. Unknown to most Kenyans, the value of unclaimed assets in the country is estimated to be between 100 and 200 billion shillings. According to the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, the bulk of these unclaimed assets are associated with people who died without leaving behind a will or who failed to disclose details of their assets. And then more than half of the unclaimed assets in Kenya are in custody of commercial banks. Let's now hear from two individuals who lost track of assets belonging to them, only to be reconnected later to those assets.
I had some sizable amount of shares which brought in some dividends, very good dividends. I had not claimed for quite some time. Luckily for me, when they were forwarded to the Unclaimed Assets, Financial Assets Authority, they called me up and they told me to follow it up. They explained to me the process, the amount they have been given. I had not claimed for several years, so they had quite some amount, and I was put on the process to follow to claim them. So I was asked to go back to my insurance, and they gave me what was needed, what I had not taken. Then I took it back to the unclaimed assets, and they processed it, and voila, we are here. The guys are doing everything. They're so good. Actually, it's the best service I think the government has come up with. I haven't seen this in a public service, and it feels good being served and knowing someone is taking care of your interests. Any person who has any investment, any dividends, any cash they don't know of, I can advise them to go to their insurance or to their broker or wherever they invested. If they're not claimed for a period of more than 3 years, they can check up with the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, and they definitely will get their share.
There were some few requirements, procedures. I have to introduce myself with my policy documents, identity card, and such things. And they want an affidavit from an advocate or a high court that was actually the claimant. Basically, when I was told to bring the requirements, the following day I took the requirements, and they initiated the process of making the payments. And after 2 days, the check was ready and I was presented.
Okay, so that's a look at some individuals who accessed the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. We'll get to that in just a moment. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Maybe I should start with you, John, before we move to the assets bit of it and before we hear from Phil. The purpose of preparing a will, because you just heard someone say it's not a priority for Kenyans or that it's not African. We always hear that. But how important is it to prepare a will?
Well, it's very, very important because once you do this, basically what you're saying is that at the point of my demise, there will not be squabbles, there will be confusion.
Yeah.
Then I am bequeathing my property out of my free will. You're able to cater for all your assets. You're able to know exactly who you're giving. You're able to basically bring some sort of order.
Yeah.
In terms of the estate that you have, that you'll be leaving behind.
Yes. At what age should someone consider starting to write their will?
The law says once you are over 18 years, you are the age of majority. You're allowed to write your will, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you think you have much or less. But then that's the entry point of law where you can write a will. And
I think previously you'd mentioned even if you just own a bicycle or a TV or whatever it is, put it there.
Basically anything you can write. In fact, even a will can just describe how you want your body to be dealt with after your death.
Yeah.
You want to be cremated, where do you want to be buried, those kind of things.
How does a will become valid? Who needs to be present, or how does it become valid?
Of course, you must actually be of sound mind. You must be over 18 years. And the will must at least be attested or witnessed by at least 2 or more people to actually confirm that those who are that was your desire, whatever was actually written in the will was your desire. And this particular will ought to be signed by you, by the testator himself, or can be signed by somebody else, but under the instructions of the testator. You are there, you are present there, and you can say, sign for me, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Or you can put a thumb impression or any manner of impression just to ensure that you are validating that which you've actually reduced into
and that it's your identity that's there. How often should you update a will?
A will is updated any time as long as you acquire more property, or maybe if the property reduces. I mean, it's something that you can keep on changing and writing and cancelling.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about writing a will.
All right. I think a little later on we'll ask you a little bit about the do's and don'ts of writing a will. Let's now come to Phil, and we're really here to try and understand the dangers of not leaving behind a will and what that does to your loved ones once you pass on. John will come in then and talk about what his organization does. But Phil, for you, what exactly is your story in terms of trying to access both wills of your deceased parents?
Well, I could say for the best part, it's quite a challenge, especially when you're at a certain age where you cannot actually trace these things.
Okay, so when did your parents pass away?
Well, 2004.
2004.
Yes.
And when they did, you didn't know of any will in existence?
No, I didn't.
And then did you suddenly now hear about it? Is that why you're now in search of it?
Exactly.
So there was hearsay that there's a will, either your mom or dad's, and you want to find out whether you have access to anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you approached John.
I approached John.
Okay. Again, I'll come to that in just a few moments in terms of what happens now. And John, we have 2 Johns today. I think it's also great to bring you in. We've seen a little bit about what your organization is able to do. So what exactly is the role of the UFAA?
Okay, thank you, Janet. UFAA actually, perhaps just to shed some light on the public, is a state corporation, state organization established under the National Treasury, pursuant to Unclaimed Financial Assets Act number 40 of 2011. So the way this body came about was, you see, initially these unclaimed assets was scattered all over and were being held by various holders. So you have a company X, they are holding the assets, company Y, Z, everybody. So there was no, perhaps what we could say, a convergence point where these assets now can be pooled and somebody takes charge of them. And that's how, in the wisdom, the government came up with this entity, which now is mandated with receiving these assets legally from these holders, and then safeguard these assets and look for these legal beneficiaries. The difference between the state holding the funds and the other corporations is that the state holds the funds on trust and in perpetuity. meaning that there were benefits, but perhaps maybe, as he's saying, his parents passed on, and maybe until he's coming on board.
Yeah.
So you see, with the authority, we're able to keep those funds until we get somebody in that line who comes and demonstrate to us that yes, indeed, I've got some legal linkage with that deceased person.
Yeah, so someone has to come and demonstrate it. What if someone believes, maybe someone passed away in their family and they say, I'm pretty sure my dad had some amount of cash somewhere, I want to trace it. Does that work, or you'd have to have a lot more evidence than that?
We've received such claims where people perceive that, yeah, I think my dad had something somewhere, someplace. And I think for us, our advice is that once you tell us maybe a clue, do you have an idea of an institution that perhaps you think your dad had something, then also you are taking initiative, because we appreciate some of these people actually don't know where these assets are sitting. So when you come to us, we do our best to see to it that we contact that institution and tell them we have received this case, and they feel that yes, indeed, there's something here. Could you check your records and revert to us? Incidentally, some are coming and we already have these funds. So you're coming to say you think, but when we check and from our records, we actually find the name. And my advice to the public is that visit our website, www.ufaa.go.ke. You'll be surprised to stamp on any asset.
What's the nature of the assets you handle? Is it money in the bank? What if is it land? What's the nature of the assets?
Currently, the way our act has been set up, we are exclusively dealing with financial assets. So those are cash and near cash. We have not yet gone to intangible assets like land. So it's purely financial assets in nature.
All right, Phil, coming back to you, and first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. I mean, you know, for your parents. What do you think, or do you have an idea of what it is that your parents could have left behind? Do you know whether it's land? Do you know whether it's money? Do you have any idea at all?
Well, coming from a political background, it's not an assumption to actually have the thought that it wouldn't be that. It's much more than just land. There's intangible assets, like he said. Intangible.
So you think it's mostly that. You spent a lot of time in the U.S. You came back home. How long between the time you returned did you then begin to hear that I think your mom or your dad had a will somewhere?
Yeah, well, when I returned, I was pretty young. So I came across situations gut reactions that made me question. Because I didn't actually know what was happening, but as I grew older, I had to strive for the answers.
To get the answers.
Exactly.
All right. John, how did you then intervene, and how do you intervene in such cases?
Well, of course, it's a challenge in the sense that, first and foremost, if you're talking about a situation where there's no will, you haven't had a look at it. You're talking about assets that you think are there, but you've not seen them, you have no idea. And you are talking about perhaps issues which you are perceiving with your mind. But having said that, then the process that perhaps we embarked on is just to write to different institutions, try to conduct several searches in the different institutions that deal with properties, just to find out that whether these particular people held any form of property in those institutions, whether they can be matched up to their names, and then from there, then of course we need to look at the issues of law as to then how does he come into the fold to be able to inherit from his parents. Have you dealt with a similar situation like that before, and how did it end? Definitely, there are many situations of that nature. But the truth is that at times when you run around, the truth starts coming out, and you start realizing that indeed there are properties, and maybe some of them are yet to be given out to other people. Then definitely you just have to move to court and be able to seek for letters of administration, and then be able to now distribute these properties. But where they've been confined to a will, and the will is available, then of course you pick up whoever was appointed as an executor of the will. You check him up for purposes of validating that particular will in court, and then the procedure of distribution takes place.
How, from your experience as a family lawyer, do a lot of Kenyans write wills, or is it something that you still feel a lot more people need to begin to?
It's instructive to note that lots of Kenyans will not write wills, basically because at times we associate wills with bad omens.
Yeah.
You feel that when I write a will, then I'm basically...
You're courting death.
Courting death,
Yeah.
writing my own obituary, something of that sort. Or we also have this notion that perhaps I'll be living for the next 100 years. Maybe I can write my will when I'm seeing death really at the door. Then maybe I'll be able to do all that. But you don't need to wait until late to write a will. In fact, a will ought to be written as soon as you're 18, with the little that you have, with the much that you have. Then it gives you a perfect opportunity to give out and bequeath these properties with a lot of knowledge, a lot of love, you know, as opposed to intestate succession, where the state, or rather the law takes effect and distributes these things or these properties according to law.
According to law.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a short break. I know we want to come back, like I said, to how to, what to include in a will and what to leave out. And from you, John, it's what happens when somebody comes to you, what are the steps and procedures. Remember to talk to us on 22422 and on Twitter using the hashtag MondaySpecialKE. If you have any questions for our panelists as well, we'd love to share those with them, so stay with Monday Special. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special, where we're talking about writing wills, the dangers of not writing them, and of course how to access unclaimed assets. Let's take a look at what some of you are saying on Twitter right now. Let's see if we can bring those up on the screens. Do we have them? Okay, we're waiting for the tweets to come up, whether there's questions or comments on that. I have some here. At Alex, all right, here we go. At Nancy Okuta says, in our polygamous family, wealth got lost when my dad died. Property was grabbed by relatives due to no will. So there we go, one of the dangers of not leaving behind a will. And at Mark Dakaskosa said, I think many people don't know the importance of writing a will, but I know from today you'll have a clue. And then at Guantai says, if Kenyans would be more willing to declare their wealth and returns, unclaimed assets after death would not be an issue. And finally, at Alex_Cole says, in circumstances where the will wasn't documented but communicated and witnessed, how do you enforce this in a court of law? And maybe I can throw that last question to you, John.
Can you read it again?
I think I actually have it here. In circumstances where the will wasn't documented but it was communicated and witnessed, is that even possible? No, it has to be documented.
Yeah,
Bottom line, it has to be documented.
Unless it's an oral will.
Unless it's an oral will.
And there are guidelines to law, in law, as to how an oral will ought to be done.
How is an oral will done?
Of course, an oral will is a privilege of mariners and perhaps people in the forces who are in active or actual danger. And then this is a will that is done in the presence of two witnesses, but it's only valid for 3 months.
Oh,
yeah. So after that duration, again, perhaps you have to make another one.
Okay.
But if a will is written, it can only be revoked by another written will. If you have a written will, then it must conform to the specific provisions of the law. The will must not have been done out of any form of coercion, influence, you know, those kind of other things that will actually negate it. It ought to come from a free will, where we ought to have 2 witnesses or more. We must have the testator actually signing a order, putting a thumbprint or any other impression, just to show that I second or rather I support that which I've said. And so if it doesn't conform to that, then that's not a will. Then it means that person died intestate. That means without a will. And so the law of intestacy takes place. That means you petition the court for grant of probate, that means grant of letters of administration, which you are given, and then now it gives you the power to distribute the estate of the deceased. We'll
come back to more of that in just a moment. Someone else at Koki_Nons is asking, why wouldn't the assets, and I think I can talk to you, John, why wouldn't the assets go to the next of kin automatically, be it a wife or child, or a husband or child? Does the document, why, I think she's asking, why does it become unclaimed and become part of the state and not automatically go to the next of kin?
Okay, fair enough. That's a very good question. And I think perhaps the response to that will be, if you look at our act, what it says actually in section 19, it does say that the primary mandate to unite these assets with their owners or their beneficiaries actually lies with the holder. So we say that it's only when the holders demonstrate. They tried looking for you, they couldn't see you, and that's how the money came to the authority. So we are saying that in an ideal situation, you should have these assets going to the owners before they come to the authority.
All right, there's another question here to you, John. Can a document without the ID of the deceased pass as a valid will? If they haven't written their ID number or passport number, can it still pass?
Yeah, it's not one of the requirements of a will.
It's not,
the most important requirement of a will is that the testator ought to be 18, to be of sound mind, there ought to be 2 witnesses at least or more. And then, of course, the other things that no undue influence was employed, there was no coercion, there was no fraud played on the testator. Those are the most valid conditions that must be adhered to.
Wamoy J says, out of curiosity, to what year do the unclaimed assets date back from? So when does it actually become unclaimed? Is it immediately? Like, how do you then, how long has it been, when do you declare it unclaimed? How long should it have been there?
Okay, good question. Again, if you look at our act in section 34, it does say that unclaimed financial assets as a regime is retrospective. So it goes as far back as when that institution was formed. But for the purpose of saying when for what asset, they are all defined. If you look from section 3 to section 17, say that, for instance, if it's a bank account, it has been dormant for the last 2 years. You've not given any instruction or anything, then to qualify to be unclaimed. Their dividends, they were declared by the company, they were due for 2 years, you haven't gone for them, it's unclaimed. Your pension fund, it was due, you've not claimed for 2 years, again, it's undue. So each of the asset class has been defined as to how long it should stay in the books of the holder, then to qualify as unclaimed. Okay,
Agnes from Kisumu asks a very interesting question. She says, I logged on to your website and found my name under Safaricom M-Pesa. What does that mean?
What that means is that she has some unclaimed assets that were held by Safaricom M-Pesa, and Safaricom M-Pesa has remitted those funds to the authority. So what she needs to do is now to begin the claiming process. Yes, where she has to... And what is the process? Somebody today watching this show is like, I know for a fact that there's someone in my family who, there's some assets that are unclaimed there. What's the first step? Other than visiting the website, which is, you know, there's a website that they can visit, and I think, I don't know whether we can scroll it at some point. It's www.ufaa.go.ke. Okay, all of it is lowercase. Okay, so we're going to get the team to upload that, www.ufaa.go.ke. So they're going to write that down there so that people can access that. So the website aside, then I know there's a step-by-step maybe on the website, but just to share it with us. I think once you find out that you've got unclaimed assets with us, then you formally have to claim from the authority. You formally write to our CEO saying that I'm so-and-so. I have unclaimed assets from this institution or this organization, and I wish to be reunited with my assets. Then we ask you for some very key documentation, one of which is your national ID, certified copy of each. Then your PIN, very important for us to have that PIN. And then also most of these holders, because we are saying it's a requirement for them to demonstrate that they tried looking for you and they couldn't reach you. That's where the money came here. And we say the way they do that is not verbally, it's writing, maybe from the last known address that we wrote to you. And I think of late you've seen them advertising in the papers that if you know you have your records or your records with us are updated, please come and update before we remit the money to the authority. So we are saying we shall require that confirmation that indeed they tried looking for you, they couldn't reach you, and based on that and this your identification, that's when you're coming to us. However, each asset again you require for different documentation. For instance, if you're claiming a bank account balance and maybe dividends, we might require some proof that indeed you are the holder of that bank account, or indeed you had those shares. Do you have the capacity to deal with, there might be a floodgate, you know, in future? Because how long have you been in existence as an authority? As an authority, I think fully operational. I think our CEO reported in February this year. Then the other team has been joining, and even others are still joining. Now see, maybe in a few months you'll just have a floodgate. Not even a few months, might be a few days. What happens then with all those numbers? Are you prepared? I think for us what we are doing is to work very closely with other stakeholders within the industry to see to it that we reach as many people as possible. For us now, our main concern is to see, can we unite as many people as possible? Because sincerely speaking, Janet, if you look at most of the beneficiaries of this money are very needy cases. It's a case where a child is not going to school somewhere and there's some 10,000 shillings lying somewhere. So they may look small amounts of money, but for some people, and majority of the Kenyans, it's actually a matter of life and death. So for us now is to try to look for these people, tell them to come forward. We are going to be very ICT savvy. We are going to leverage a lot more on ICT. Make sure we can pay you via M-Pesa, we can transfer money to your bank account, the money can reach you wherever you are without you necessarily having to come to our office. So we're having a lot of intermediaries whom we are going to work closely to make our life much easier.
Phil and John, I think maybe there's a synergy here in terms of trying to... how successful have you been right now in terms of Phil's case? Is this something that you're still aggressively working on?
In fact, it's a blessing to have John here.
This could be the first step, right?
Yes. When two Johns combine, definitely something will happen. And I think the institution is worth of recommendation. Well, because even with the legal processes intact, at times it's very difficult to be able to trace the assets for you to lodge any formal and legal claim before the law courts. But perhaps using the institution, the cases of people like Phil and many others, I think will be easily resolved. And actually we can get a way out much quicker and faster. Than any. Phil, how important is it for you to have this closure in terms of being able to know what is out there for you? How important is it? Is it something that you're constantly thinking about, something that you're constantly trying to chase and find out?
Yes, and also for the people who go through the same. I think I should be an icon for the next generation. And also, it is a right. And it's something that shouldn't be taken advantage of. So I pretty much put emphasis not only in my benefit, not only me benefiting from it, but for a whole nation. That's my main concern.
You mentioned earlier that you called yourself an activist.
Yes.
Is this your activism, or did you mean something else?
Yes, this is my
This is your activism. The right to access what's yours.
What's yours.
Okay.
And pretty much more.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I wish you all the best. I really hope, you know, the next time we're all able to sit here, you can say you made some headway. And maybe just some parting words from you two before we also get from Phil. I don't know if we've gone through very quickly the do's and don'ts, but just your parting shot in terms of writing a will and what you really feel Kenyans need to know.
Well, a will has no formal way of writing. You just need to look at the law and perhaps put in the necessary ingredients. You don't need necessarily a lawyer to do it. You can do it provided you know what's required. Why is it important to make a will? It will actually help us from perhaps having this kind of dangerous discussion about unclaimed assets and the confusion that actually usually mar situations where somebody has departed the state without leaving a will. It's a simple document. You put whatever you have in there. I mean, if you're over 18 years and you have sound mind, you can write whatever you have.
And you can just write it in the form of a letter. There's no template.
Form of a letter. Let two witnesses attest to it. Say we were there. Put your thumbprint or your signature, and that will be it. In case you get more property as days go by, yours is to write another will, revoke this other one, burn it, destroy it completely, write another one, and say, I've attained much more property, include them. So simple as that. And once you do that, you will realize that you will leave behind a lot of organized, peaceful atmosphere, as opposed to, you know, the kind of fight that we've seen, people trying to squabble over property, people trying to find out where the property was, and actually the people who have benefited from the property end up not benefiting.
All right. I think I'm getting comments that either people are struggling to open your website, maybe it's crashed, I don't know. But they're saying it's not opening. But it's active, right? They should be able to.
Yes.
Okay, ufaa.go.ke.
Yes.
All right. Well, then they'll keep trying, and we'll keep hearing from Kenyans. But what about you and what you'd like to let Kenyans know about?
I think for me is first to let the public appreciate that there's a new regime, actually unclaimed financial assets. There's none of such in Africa. So we are the very first one. And the spirit of coming up with this authority was actually to help that common Mwananchi down there who doesn't know where his or her funds are or his parents. We are real, we are up and running. So my advice is that for these holders of these assets, look for these owners. And if you can't find them, remit them to the authority. Section 33 of our Act is quite punitive, and I would wish perhaps the CEOs and maybe people in charge of compliance to have a look at that section and see what it means to them in terms of failure to comply. And then for us as an authority, we are going, and indeed we are very transparent, so that as and when these funds come in, then we are letting the Kenya know. Through our website, through our publications, because the law does allow us to actually publish and disclose that, this is the money we have received, and therefore so and so. And that way these people can come forward so that we complete the cycle of receiving, safeguarding, and actually reuniting them with their rightful owner. I
know you're still new, so people who are in the counties can only access you online? Is that it for now? If there's someone watching who's not in Nairobi, how do they communicate with you? At
the moment we can be reached online, but again, as I said, and part of this show is that to raise that awareness that indeed we are there, as we look for other mechanisms of reaching everybody in every part of our country, Kenya.
All right. Phil, I know you've already said that for you this is about, there's a bigger movement to it, it's not just you. So I don't know whether you have anything else you want to add, or whether that's what you just want Kenyans to know that.
I have some more to add. I would really put emphasis on people not going through what I went through, but it made me strong. Not anything that's bad is not always bad for you. It's also good.
Makes you stronger.
It makes you stronger. So it's how you look at it. And I know 1 million people who are watching right now will understand the impact that a child has when they left on their own. Not only on their own, because this is not my interest, mostly my interest. It's for the interest for another child somewhere.
Thank you again, and like I said, we wish you all the very best. Keep us posted on how it's going. John, thank you so much for sharing the information on your organization, for the work you're doing as well, and for sharing your story. And thank you for watching Monday Special tonight. As morbid as it sounds, it's important that if you're 18 and over, you need to write a will. I've been challenged. I was just telling them it's also frightening for me. Just the thought of it, it's daunting, but I think it's extremely important. So thank you for watching. We hope you've learned something. Remember to visit ufaa.go.ke. We hope the website will be up by the time the show is over, and try and find out how you can start seeking your unclaimed assets. I'm Janet Mbugua. Have a good night.